So I want to start with the most important thing, which is, why is there a duck on the title slide? The answer is science. It turns out, you may think fun is all fun and games. No. Fun is actually an extremely serious topic, and it is the subject of much scientific research. And you may think the scientific research about fun is fun, but no, the scientific research around fun is mostly incredibly boring and dry and academic, such as hybrid humor as a cultural translation, the example of Boer humor. Hands up, who would like me to go into more detail on this paper? Exactly. Or the function of face gestures and head movements in spontaneous humorous communication. We can go as deep as you like, and I promise you, you will not like it. The only one you might find slightly interesting is there's a whole area of research about computers and humor, which makes sense because computers are famously unfunny. They do not have senses of humor. Humor is the sort of the last frontier of AI. And on the way to sort of trying to deal with that, one of the things that they're working on is, can we at least teach computers to tell if people find something funny? So we have things like towards automated full body detection of laughter driven by human expert annotation, which means if enough people label an image to say someone is laughing, can the computer actually work it out? I don't know. I didn't read the paper. It looked too boring. But I do want to talk about one slightly more accessible piece of research on humor. This was the world's largest scientific experiment. I think that probably excludes some of the epidemiology research, but this is the sort of the largest one where they went out and they recruited volunteers. And what they tried to find out is, what is the world's funniest joke? And also, how does it vary by location and that kind of thing? And one of the things that they did, because they had this huge population with 350,000 participants, and they would visit a website and they would say, rank this joke. They could change the jokes round. And so they did a controlled experiment of a blank does a blank, and they could change the animal. And it turns out, controlled experiment research proves ducks make jokes funnier. So if you have a joke and you want to give it that little extra edge of humor, add a duck. I don't know why this is. I think it's sort of a complex of things. One of it is that ducks just look funny. They waddle. Anything that waddles is funny. But also, there's something about the letter K that also makes things funnier for reasons. Who knows? So I'm not going to share every funny joke from the study, because then we'd run out of time. But I do want to share one, because I really liked it. So if you're Belgian, this is hilarious to you. If you're not Belgian, well, I don't know. I thought it was funny. We shall see. The funniest joke to Belgians: why do ducks have webbed feet? The answer is so that they can stamp out fires. Why do elephants have flat feet? Yes, you've got it, exactly. It's so that they can stamp out burning ducks. And this leads me to the sort of the wonder of technology. Because here we have a duck, and here, through the power of my laptop, we have a burning duck. That slide is completely gratuitous. You will learn nothing from that slide, but I did it because I could. But, of course, I've now been talking about ducks and fires and various things. And this isn't actually a Wendy's, this is a technology conference, but it amounts to the same thing. Why am I talking about ducks? Why aren't I talking about something important? Well, let me go back to that. But let me first of all talk a little bit about me. The first question is, why are we talking about ducks? And then the second question is, why am I in particular talking about ducks? Do I have any qualifications on duck humor, because the quackologists are in the next building and we perhaps should be there. But I do have some qualifications to talk about fun in the workplace. For many years, I worked for IBM. And most recently, I worked for an organization called the IBM Garage at the end, and it was called the IBM Bluemix Garage at the beginning. And we had a method that we were really proud of. It combined a lot of things that you've probably heard about elsewhere today and heard about elsewhere in general, test-driven development, pair programming, lean, all of this good stuff. But one of the elements of the method was a fun work environment. So we were a consultant, so we would go to organizations and we would say, I can tell you how to solve your software problems. A, do pair programming, and B, have fun. And they'd kind of go, I'm not sure about either of those, but okay, let's see. So I now no longer work for IBM. I work for Red Hat, and I'm a developer on the Quarkus team. So I help build Quarkus. Hands up who's heard of Quarkus? A few hands. Hands up who's doing Java development? Slightly more hands. Okay, so if you're not doing Java development, you can tune out this bit. But if you are doing Java development and you haven't heard of Quarkus, go look at Quarkus because it will make you happy. Quarkus is a Java runtime. It has a whole bunch of advantages because it is faster and lighter and more efficient than traditional Java runtimes. But as well as all of those benefits, one of the things that we tried to bake right in is developer joy. So if you develop on Quarkus, we think and hope and are fairly confident you will be a happier human being, which is a pretty good value proposition. But we're not here to talk about Quarkus, and we're not really here to talk about me. Instead, let's talk about you, because I think every conference talk really should be about how does the audience leave more awesome, more able to do their job, more able to achieve their things. So for you and your career, is there going to be ducks in your career in future? Well, I'm not sure. I have this hope, but I also have this fear that when people leave the conference and they go back and they say, oh, boss, thank you for sending me to this conference. It was such a great learning experience. And, I know you perhaps want to do a code review of my 10 most salient lines of code and then, perhaps sack me. But before we do that, let me tell you about how ducks are the funniest animal. And then that conversation ends with, and actually you don't need to do the code review. You can just sack me now and I'll just leave the building because I've just completely shown that I am not a worthwhile employee because I think about ducks rather than your business metrics. And I think realistically, it's probably not going to happen. All of us tend to, at work, keep a professional facade, and we don't, on our LinkedIn profile, have things like specialty, having fun at work. Even I speak about fun. I am sort of, insofar as there's such a thing, a fun professional. Even I don't have that on my LinkedIn profile. I just sort of leave it blank because I'm not brave enough. I perhaps should. I should do a controlled experiment, put it on, and then see how many recruiter invitations I get compared to before. But I haven't done that experiment because I'm not brave enough. And in general, I think for all of us, when we think about how we present ourselves to our current employer, when we think about how we present ourselves to future employers, there's these things that we want to say. We say, I led this, I promoted this, I solved this, I was not fun-loving. Fun-loving is not in that list. And we keep fun as this kind of dark secret where we kind of think that maybe fun is nice, but we've never really asked anybody else whether they think fun is nice in case, they look at us as some sort of unprofessional person who just has no place in the workplace. And I think this is actually really deep-rooted cultural values. In Britain, we have a strong cultural tradition with the Puritans and with the Calvinists that says fun is wrong. If you have fun, that means you're a bad person and you're not going to go to the good place because fun is wrong. We're 2 days off the 1st of December when I can really start talking about Christmas. Because in England, Christmas was banned for being too much fun during the time of the Puritans. So that's the kind of the cultural tradition that we're fighting against when we say, hey, fun is actually okay. Having fun maybe doesn't mean you're a bad person. So what is this fun thing that's so terrible? Well, this is all you need to know. It is a fungi. No, that's not all you need to go. But we can go back to the research to define fun. So there's a thesis on fun, and in this thesis, they define fun is a point on the intersection of engagement levels and social interaction for a given activity. Hands up who's wishing they'd gone to one of the other talks, right? Like, the one thing to take away from that is that you can define something that you call the funtinuum, which is a graph. So if you remember one thing from this talk, you can remember the funtinuum. But I think we could probably be a bit more practical in how we define fun. And we can think of it in terms of a spectrum. One of the things that is part of this sort of big fun spectrum is exploration. So that's what babies do when they have a thing and they just sort of go boink, 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 and they sort of, pull the things and it makes a noise and it's all very gratifying. Slightly more sophisticated is a puzzle. You can't win at an activity set like those ones, but you can win at a puzzle. You can solve it. Sometimes, though, there is no winning. Sometimes it's just the sheer joy of interacting with something, of using our imagination, of making it do things. And, we take the horse and we go donk, 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 and it's just enjoyable. A puzzle you can solve, but a game you can really solve because you can win it and you can show that you are better than all of your friends by winning a game. And then, of course, at the end of all that, we have work. So a puzzle has rules. Games have rules and a winner. Something like play has no rules. What about work? Well, work probably doesn't have a winner, but it does have rules. It definitely has rules. So we can sort of plot those out. Something like exploration, it's focused investigation. Play, we just do it for its own sake. A puzzle has a goal and rules. Games have a winner and rules, and then work in the middle sort of has a goal. And I think I'm missing something with all of this, which is sometimes things are just fun. Sometimes they're funny. Sometimes we laugh, and that's really important. And with all of those, except for maybe work in the bad cases, I think the thing that unifies them is what is called positive affect, which is a very fancy way of saying it feels good. We look happy when we do it. We smile. And I'm being a bit sloppy in all of this, and I'm sort of combining a few different things that I think all fit into sort of a big mass. So there's sort of fun, but then there's happiness. There's joy, like what I talked about with Quarkus. There's laughter, like what we saw with the ducks. There's that delight, there's silliness, there's jokes. And actually, I think all of these jokes, who could forget the fungi? All of these have their place. And the good news for us as IT professionals is I think we actually get more than our fair share of them with programming, because programming is fun. And I think programming is fun for that really primitive reason that we get to control things when we program, and in the best case, they do what we intended. And Fred Brooks, who authored the Mythical Man Month, died this month. And one of the things that I saw in the tributes to him, which I'd never seen before, which goes to show that I have never actually read the Mythical Man Month, I've only ever told people it's important, like everybody else, is He talks about the joy of the craft, and he specifically says programming is fun. And the reasons are that making is fun. It's like mud pies. We just sort of go, ooh, I made something. But there's sort of a higher purpose as well, which is that being useful is fun. We like to be useful. And of course, puzzles are fun. We like to do things that no one else could do. Learning is fun. And he talks about code as a very tractable medium. And I've paraphrased slightly there to say it's squishy and awesome. But what he really means is that if you're working in something like marble, it takes you a really long time from when you start out to when you have something that you might want to show somebody. If you're working in a modern programming language, you can have something in no time flat that is worth sharing, that's impressive, and that's nice. So going back to those sort of modes of fun, exploration should be familiar to all of us, because the first thing we do with any new programming language is we try and make it do something. Puzzles should also be very familiar to all of us, because we've all had more puzzles than we probably want. Why is this doing this? And games, I think, again, we've probably all seen this at work for the right reasons and the wrong reasons. And Jessica talked about this morning as well. Who here hasn't tried to gamify their velocity chart in order to show that they were better than everybody else in the team, right? But then we get as well, I think, when we're coding, we just get that positive affect. So I love this photo because it's Katie Bowman when she discovered that her algorithm for the black hole worked. And you can just see that joy, that delight on her face. And I think we've all had that at least some of the time at work, which is amazing. Less amazing is the fact that we probably only get it some of the time. A lot of our workplaces, even though we have this potential for it to be really fun, are not actually all that fun. And I think this comes back to this sort of 1980s management model, which is command and control. And that management model actually goes back even further to a military model, which is very much about hierarchy and command and control, which makes sense if you're asking people to kill people, because you probably need to have some sort of control in that kind of system. Luckily, that's not what most of us are doing for our jobs. But then I think as well, what really frustrates a lot of us at work is just this feeling that we don't, instead of controlling things, which is what's fun, the processes are controlling us, and we're just sort of a cog in a machine. And we're not even a cog in an effective machine. We're a cog in a stupid machine that's making us do the wrong thing and waste our time. And it doesn't have to be that way, because actually, if we can get fun into our workplaces, it's going to be better. There's a lot of research that shows fun is good for business. And if you go to something like the DORA research, they found that job satisfaction was the #1 predictor of organizational performance. If you have happy people in your workplace, your business is going to do better. And you can talk about the correlation and the cause and effect there, but that's the takeaway. And this is an incredibly old idea. Aristotle said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. If we enjoy what we're doing, we're gonna do a better job. And we see this at all levels. A while ago, I was working on a project, and it was a remote project, and the phone line was really bad. I think it was to South Africa, and I was dialed in, and everybody else was in the same room, and I couldn't really understand what was going on at all. And then my manager said, "So how's that project doing?" I was like, I don't know. What did they say? I don't know. But I can tell you, I think this project is healthy. And the reason I think this project is healthy, because the only thing I could hear on the conference call was giggle, 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 laugh, laugh, laugh. And that told me that the team weren't like at each other's throat, that they weren't really stressed, that they felt comfortable and happy enough working together to be smiling. So I thought, okay, we're in good shape. And when you look at these sort of metrics like happiness, laughter seems like the one that surely must have the least business relevance. But actually, laughter is really good. This is something that I learned from Ina, who spoke earlier and who's upstairs right now. Laughter is an incredibly good way of diffusing a tense situation. So if you have that argument about the architecture, if then you can make a joke, that kind of heals the team a bit. It creates a team cohesion. It creates a sense of us. And it's also physically just a nice muscle workout, which is always good. And again, there's so much research for this. So studies show that if employees are having fun, people take less sick leave, they work harder, and they're more productive. So really, what is not to like? And we can quantify this. So your brain at positive is 31% more productive than your brain at negative, neutral, or stressed. And so if you went to your boss and said, I can make us 31% more productive, they would say, yes, absolutely, tell me what to do. And you might be looking at that and saying, okay, yeah, but that positive mindset, that's really complex to achieve. That's something bigger than just this sort of fun simplification. That is not as simple as just watching cat videos at work in order to make yourself more productive. It is literally as simple as watching cat videos at work to make yourself more productive. Another study showed that people who had just watched a comedy video were approximately 12% more productive than people who hadn't. So just that, really simple childish break is actually going to make a productivity difference. And of course, we're lucky. We work in a creative industry, and you can kind of make this natural link between us being creative and us being relaxed. But this is actually true across all fields. And it's even true across things that aren't even humans. If you're a farmer, your piglets grow faster, to their misfortune, if they play more. So for something that is so completely non-creative that is not even a person, play improves business metrics. And with this one, again, you may say, okay, I'm not sure about the cause and the correlation on that one. Maybe they're playing more because they're better fed or something, but it doesn't matter. The point is, this fun is going to help us. And I think about that with something my manager said, because if you have someone in to do your bathroom or something like that, if you have contractors and they're laughing around and joking, I think our natural response is, why are you laughing? I'm not paying you to laugh. I'm paying you to fix my bathroom or build my payment system or whatever it is. But actually, if they're laughing, that shows that they're not stressed. That shows they're in their zone of competence, which is where you want employees and contractors to be. So does that mean it's a free-for-all? Can we have all the fun all the time? And that, by the way, is lots of fungi, which is the last fungi joke I will make. You'll all be glad to hear. Well, no. Way back when Groovy just started to be a thing, a colleague of mine had an immense amount of fun with Groovy, and he rewrote all of our test suites in Groovy, and it was so productive for him, and he was so happy. And then he left the company, and the rest of us had time pressures, and we had to maintain these test suites in a language that we didn't know, and we were much, much less entertained. So there are definitely limits to fun. So although fun does have business value, that doesn't mean that you should only do things if they're fun. You have to sort of, into every life, some rain must fall. Siren Hoffander, who talks about security, talks about washing the dishes. That no matter what, there are some things that aren't going to be our favorite activity that we do have to do. That's just life. But we can find a balance. So if you're only washing the dishes and you're never actually getting to eat the nice meal, that's not right either. There's another aspect of fun which is sometimes problematic, which is trolling. So research into trolls shows that their motivation is fun. And we're seeing this now playing out in front of us, unfortunately, with what I've been riveted by what's going on with Twitter. And one of the things that we're seeing is trolling as a response to problems. So a senator got impersonated, and Musk responded by saying, perhaps it's because your real account sounds like a parody. He was having a lot of fun. Or here, again, you can see, some sort of reporting on the impersonations. And the response is, this is so much fun. I'm having so much fun with my new toy. Well, not everyone is having fun. Particularly, of course, for the people who have been impacted by the layoffs. And this is a cartoon from someone who is now an ex-Twitter employee. But I don't know if you can read the caption, but they're little fired darts. Shall we stop now? No, this is fun. No, this is the wrong kind of fun. And if we wanted sort of evidence that it's not just the cartoon, again, we're seeing this play out on Twitter, that the response to someone raising a dissenting voice is a tragic case of adult onset Tourette's. That is the wrong kind of fun to be having at the expense of your employees who you just fired. So there's a really strong connection between fun and psychological safety. If you feel psychologically safe, you are more able to have fun. If you create an environment where only one person is having fun, that is not going to be a psychologically safe environment. We'll have to see how this one plays out. It is so sad to witness it as someone who really believes that workplaces work better when they're happy. And in 2 weeks, Twitter went from the most amazing, supportive, wonderful, empowering place I've ever worked, for those of you who know Andy Piper, to the most toxic workplace among any tech company. So yeah, the love where you worked hashtag is rather sad. And what will be interesting to see is Holly right? Is everybody else right? Or will this actually be a success despite being incredibly toxic? I don't think it will be, but it's too early to say now. But with all of this, I think what we are seeing again is that delight in watching the world burn. And reiterating, this is the wrong kind of fun. Fun works. Fun is productive if everybody's having fun. If only one person is having fun, that's not okay. Or even one of the things about laughter is laughter creates social cohesion. It creates an us. But we have to think about who the them is in our laughter. Is it the people across the hall? That's probably okay. Is it, PHP users? That's maybe okay. Or is it someone who we shouldn't be laughing at? We need to be thoughtful about it. So do enjoy fun, but responsibility is important. So how do you get this fun? I've given this talk quite a lot. And I used to say that the first thing was to find unfun things. But then I realized that actually that was the wrong first step, because people would come up to me and they'd tell me these horrible stories about their workplaces. And so then I realized there's actually a step 0, which is stop prohibiting fun. I didn't think I had to say this, but you have to stop prohibiting fun. So people told me in their workplace, they used to send an email around saying there's cakes in the kitchen, and HR told them they had to stop using the company resources to share news about cakes. I never understood the rationale, but way back before, in the very early days of the internet, when most of us didn't have internet at home, a team I knew used to play Quake on the office internet with the remote teams that they were working with. It was a wonderful thing. It was after office hours. They were team building, And again, management came into them and said, if you're in the office after 5:30 p.m., you need to be doing work. You cannot just be interacting with your colleagues in a way, I don't know. And I heard this story from someone who was in Switzerland. I don't know how relevant that is. But he told me that he was typing away and he had just solved a problem and it was going really well. So he was sort of, bopping along and smiling. And a project manager kind of crept up behind him, as project managers do, and said, "Why are you smiling? Work is not a place to be happy." So if this is you, you did it wrong. This is not how to incentivize your team. So hopefully I am preaching to the converted on this one and you all agree that prohibiting fun is a bad idea. So then you can go on to getting rid of the unfun things. This is important because if a process is unfun, that's usually a red flag that it's not adding value. The reason we hate doing it is because we know our time could be better and more productively spent doing something else. So if you get rid of those unfun things, that's waste. And often this waste comes from that kind of top-down structure where the people who are telling us what to do don't have the context that we have, and they're getting it wrong. And that's just frustrating. So autonomy makes people happy, and it usually gives much better results. And there's a whole bunch of these sort of frictions and drags, like, meetings and just all of these things. And the good news is actually we can fix these. And for almost all of these, we know that the alternative makes people happier and it's also more productive. So I'm not going to go through this whole list, but I would really encourage you to move towards these kinds of tools. And I knew Jessica was going to be talking about gamification, and so I knew I would sort of reference her for that. But I actually have an older reference from hers as well about pair programming and code review from way back in 2016. So you can compare the different hairstyle, because she's in the front row, which is that code review makes people miserable. There are better things that you can do, like pair programming. Being quizzed for status makes people miserable. There are things you can do, like having status there for everybody to see, and keeping your stories small enough that the project manager doesn't need to come to you and say, okay, so are we 35% through this story or 40% through this story? And how come 2 weeks ago we were 40% through the story, but now you're 28% through the story? If you have small stories, they just go along the assembly line. Everybody's happy. Nobody's wasting time on reporting. I would also encourage you to look into not even estimating effort for your stories. If you get your stories small enough, they're probably about 1 point each, and they can just roll off the assembly line without having to spend time in estimation meetings, which are some of the most unproductive, soul-draining meetings I have ever experienced. I would also encourage you to do test-driven development, partly because it gives results, but mostly because TDD is really fun. TDD is basically gamified testing. You start with those red things and then you make them go green, and it's incredibly gratifying. It's a game. I would also encourage you to do automation, because there's 2 wins here. Computers don't expect to have fun. That may change at some point, and all of the computers that we got to do our most boring and tedious things will sort of rise in revenge and chase us down saying, why did you have me do this? Until that day, we can safely get them doing the repetitive things. And as a bonus, automating things is incredibly fun. So it's win-win. And I've been really encouraged now by things like the rise of SRE as a profession, because the core principle of SRE is to get rid of toil. And I just love the fact that there's a whole profession whose founding principle is getting rid of boring things. And more generally, I love what Gene Kim says about DevOps, because he says DevOps helps make our lives humane. It makes our workplace nicer, and we also win in the marketplace. So it is absolutely a double win. Similarly, with just all of those continuous delivery and continuous integration and all of those techniques, they make things more enjoyable, and they're also more effective. And if they're not, then it's probably worth revisiting your techniques there. And with all of those things, I think what makes them really nice is that fast feedback. So when you put your code review in and then you get feedback on it a day later, that's depressing. When you put your merge in and then the thing ships and you get user feedback 6 months later, that's depressing. We want that fast feedback. That's what we're optimized for. So once you've reorganized your work and your technology and everything to get the fast feedback, it's at that point that you can start adding the fun. And there's some things that you can do that are really effective. So your brain needs breaks. You will think better if you can have breaks. If you can put exercise in the breaks, like a ping pong table, then you exercise your brain, you exercise your body, and it's all good. And when we think about our job and that sort of work, it's not a puzzle, it's not play, the actual work part, can that itself be fun? I think it can. One of the ways in which it can be fun, again, Jessica talked about a lot of that this morning, which is gamification. Gamification is a really easy way to bring fun into your workplace because management loves games, because games have rules and a winner, and that's what management want. But we can get some really surprising results with gamification. So Volkswagen did some research, and they found that if you just put little piano, I don't know what you even call them, if you paint the stairs to look like piano keys, that in itself is enough motivation to get people to change behavior and take the stairs rather than the escalator. And then, of course, we see this in interaction design all over the place. So Stack Overflow is gamified forums. It works much better. I haven't used the security training that Jessica was talking about, but I did do an OWASP bootcamp where in order to pass the certification, you had to hack the test. It was so much fun. It was so cool. I mentioned TTD is gamified testing. It's fun. And I saw a really interesting talk a few years ago. And it was a team, and they were talking about how they had just this mountain of technical debt in Sonar. And they needed to get it down, and they didn't know how to do it. So what they did was they had a competition. And as a result of this competition, they got 7,000 new lines of test coverage. We won't talk about whether test coverage is a good metric. They got 1,000 new tests added. They fixed 230 issues. And they reckoned that it was 10 years of technical debt that just got resolved. So that's kind of amazing. But the interesting thing is, what was it that managed to change that huge tech debt mountain into something that had just been disappeared? Was it a year's salary? No. It was a pizza. The reward of a pizza was enough to drive people to do all of this work. And again, it's like we heard this morning, at some point you start to say, wait a minute, why am I doing all this for a pizza? I could go buy my own pizza. But that's not how we work. We find it really motivating. But you do have to be careful. You have to be extremely careful about what metrics you choose in those cases, because people will drive those metrics. We have that motivation. And you get what you measure. So if you only measure test coverage, you might get tests that cover the code but don't have any assertions, which I have seen in code bases and which is really sad. And the way we are motivated by these things is really interesting. So there's a crowdsourcing project for mapping meteors on the moon. And it's gamified, so you can go in and then you can label it, and then I guess it gets fed into machine learning eventually. And this is just crowdsourcing. It is public science. There is no prize at all for this. There's not even a pizza for this. All you get is a little scoreboard. And yet, they find that people so want to do well on this completely meaningless scoreboard that they will label things incorrectly just in order to drive their scores up. So gamification is an extremely powerful force, and you have to be very careful how you use it. Another risk with gamification is that employees are not stupid. At some point, they will notice, wait a minute, did I do all that for a pizza? Well, couldn't you have paid me instead? That might have been better. So it does have to be used with caution, but it's very interesting. I want to talk just a little bit about another. Gamification is really easy, right? Because we can go and we can say, look, we've gamified this and we've got this business metric and there was rules. But that doesn't mean that the other things that sort of fall into that play bucket don't have value, even if the value is harder to measure. And play in particular, play has no rules, play has no goal, but it's really important in the workplace. And we see a brilliant example of play whenever there's an Easter egg in a product. And I've got loads of examples of Easter eggs, and I don't have time to show them all, but I just want to show one or two just because they give me so much delight, and you just know they gave the person who coded them delight as well. So this isn't there anymore, but it used to be that if you went to Google Maps and you typed in that you wanted to get to the Shire, from the Shire to Mordor, it would say, caution, one does not simply walk into Mordor. It's just, yeah, exactly, like that reaction that we all have. You know that they had that internally, and it just made their day, and it's just so nice. And even though this is nice, that doesn't mean it doesn't have value, because actually, like, children learn through play, and everybody accepts that. And for us as adults, learning is really important too, and play is also how we learn. So we need to keep doing it. And there's a lot of examples where someone will be playing at work, and it seems like it has no purpose. And then a few months later, that thing that they were just playing, that technology that they were just goofing around with, suddenly is a thing that's going to help them solve the next business problem. I've had this. How many hands up who's had this? Yeah, like a lot of you, right? You know, you couldn't justify it at the time, but it came in useful later. So just because fun is amazing doesn't mean that it doesn't go wrong. It has to be, like with the gamification, it has to be really carefully managed. And there is a tendency, if we take the fun is good message too seriously, that management goes, fun is good. I am sold on the value of fun. We are going to have mandatory team building activities in order to make sure that you all have as much fun as possible to maximize my business metrics. Funnily enough, that doesn't work. Team building activities are a bit Marmite. A lot of us dislike them. And it's really going to depend on the workplace. There's no single formula for fun. So for example, something that's fun once after the 52nd time may not be fun. So for example, evening socializing in particular, for people who have children, that can be really problematic, and it can be a real drain. For people who are extroverted, it can be fun. So some people are in the corner going, I hate my life. Some people are at home going, why did they do it without me? And then some people are going, I love this workplace. And of course, there are ways to get this very, very wrong. I heard the saddest story about applying metrics to fun, which is that they had an office party, but they wanted to make sure that everybody took advantage of this. So they took attendance at the office party, and they told people that they had to turn up to the office party because, they were being paid, it was their work time, so they had to be having fun or else they were in trouble. This is how to do it wrong. So it is sadly very possible to fail at fun. If you forget to fix the other stuff first, then, no matter how much sort of layer of fun and party hats and ping pong tables and everything else you put on top, your workplace is still going to be terrible. I once worked on a project, And it was awful. We had sort of loads of agile coaches, and we had big Jenga and Tetris and everything at the meetings. They had laminated the architecture diagrams to make sure that there was no possibility of them changing. And we had 1,000-row requirement spreadsheets. And yet there was this sort of layer of fun. It was not good. So to wrap up, fun, it's really, really important. Step 1, get rid of the unfun things. Only once you've done that, you can add in the fun things. And if you do the second without doing the first, it's going to fail and you will be David Brent and everybody will hate you. With that, I know I went through the slides quite quickly. They are there if you want to go back and look at some of the bits. And thank you very much.